Hey Andrew, this is Dave Noel with CodeSquid.ca. I'm just going to walk you through a little tutorial on how to set up your framework graphics. These are just really simple videos that I threw together using your PDFs that you designed so graciously. Thank you very much. Basically, when I set these up, I'll just call this over here. I'm presented with a few things. I've got the artwork. I think maybe I will use the integrated customer management one because this one is kind of a slightly different look and feel to it. So I will grab this and bring it into the folder here. Poink. Okay, so you can see we have some graphics. Some of these are in more of a horizontal format, but I'm going to get really extreme with this and pick one that's like this really long format. See how this goes? The reason for that is not all of these graphics are going to be following the same format. So you want to make sure that you have something that modularly fits in the actual video that you're using. So even though this is a really long graphic, if we have a look at, zoom in on what the actual modules would look like. So let's just zoom this over here like this. This is what every module would look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a little plugin called MonkeyCam Pro. I'll show you where to get that. And we're going to sort of zoom in on each individual section here using Null Objects in After Effects. Now, I know that might sound, if you're not really familiar with After Effects, that might be a little intimidating, but don't worry, it's not going to be that difficult to handle. So we just go through this and we make sure that everything looks okay. There's a little bit of drift, like things like I would put these behind this area here because all of these are going to be brought in as vector graphics because you can see that I'm looking at the AI file here. I'll just show you how to do that. So first things first, what you want to do is you want to set up an account with aescripts.com and get MonkeyCam Pro. You see it up here. What this allows you to do is you can set up your audio markers depending on the different slides in the video, and you set that up in Audition, and then when you bring it into After Effects, you can use those audio markers to automatically move the camera around and automatically apply effects and stuff to it. So you really should be able to get this whole thing finished in about 20 minutes to a half an hour. You can set up a video like this. So I'll walk you through how to do that, and let's just get started. So MonkeyCam Pro is the one that you want to get to. If you go to the MonkeyCam Pro page, actually, they have MonkeyCam Pro promo here, whatever, and they also have a quick start guide that'll sort of give you the basics on how to do this. I ran into a couple of gotchas when I first started learning how to use this, so I'll take you through those gotchas and hopefully they won't cause you to tear out what remaining hair you have. Let's see here, and we have, yeah, just it's pretty handy. Their resources are pretty handy. And if you get stuck, as always, just go ahead and hit me up, and I'll walk you through something really simple. All right, without further ado, let's get into After Effects. So let's go to After Effects, the new CC version for 2020. It's very, very nice and sleek. And here we are. Now I've set up a little thing called tutorial. I'll take you through what that's going to look like. So up here in composition, we set up a new composition, and we're going to call this something like, I don't know, integrated framework. Okay, and we want to have this as, just a standard sort of 16:9 aspect ratio. Generally online, you can go all the way up to 4K, but most monitors can't really handle 4K right now. So I would just do 1920 by 1080. This gives you a 16:9 aspect ratio. Lock that ratio down. You want to go with square pixels, And why not just set your frame rate to either 25 or 30? I'll just put it on 30. That makes it so that it's not all stuttery and stuff, and it'll match up with most monitor refresh rates, so it'll look nice and clean when you go to do it. We're going to make the duration of the clip 2 minutes and 50 seconds based on the audio that I was given. I'll show you how to look at that in a second. And we just hit OK. Boop. Here we go. Now it looks really small. Don't worry about that. That's just because I'm viewing it at 25% at a quarter of the resolution. That allows you to view your stuff as you're building it sort of in low res. I don't know if you were a Quark Express user, but you know, with the old page layout software, you would do things in super low res, and then you would just sort of, when you rendered it out as a PDF, it would be, you know, nice and high res and ready for print. But if you're using stuff for layout, just work low res and you should be good. It doesn't have to look flashy while you're doing it. You just have to know that it works. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our assets. So you see up here in the project panel, up here, you have, right now I'm using the workspace for animation. Okay, and I've customized it by adding the MonkeyCam Pro script in there. So this allows me to have this window right here, MonkeyCam Pro. If you don't have this, it's not going to work. Okay, because this is the magic of the whole process. So go out and get this plugin. It's not that expensive. Okay, so without getting too bogged down in the weeds, we will bring in our graphics. So we have the integrated customer service graphics. So we go burp and we drag it into our project panel. So you want to bring it in as layer size, bring it in as a composition so that you have access to the layers. I'll tell you why in a moment. And you hit OK. And boom. See, it created an extra composition here. Now you can get into that composition and look. La, 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 la. You can see that composition is actually the same size in duration as your main clip here, integrated framework, and it has all of your layers in an editable format. Now the reason why that's powerful is what you can do is you would then go to your integrated framework thing, bring in your infographic composition. You can see it's really big, but this is going to be your final video, remember, and you can time it so that whenever your camera pans down to the area you want, you can have fun and sort of animate these things as you see fit. You're sort of nesting compositions that way. And everything just sort of lines up really nicely because aside from the actual sort of physical dimensions of this composition, you can see it's really tall instead of wide. It still has the same frame rates and it still has everything else because you set up your initial composition as integrated framework right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this way down. Whoop. Make sure you hold down Shift. After Effects doesn't follow the same brand spanking new Photoshop thing where you don't have to hold down Shift anymore. So just hold down Shift and make this puppy small. There we go. Okay, now there's a couple of here are some of the gotchas that I was telling you about. So first, you'll notice that it's surrounded by a big black area. What we're going to do is we're going to right click or control click, burp, like that, and we're going to say new solid, and the solid is just going to be a white solid. So you just go okay, and you'll see solids up here. It says white solid, and down here you have the white solid. Put that below, and there you go. Now what we do is we're going to take this integrated customer management infographic and we're going to make it just a wee bit smaller there. Hold down Shift. There we go. And we're going to turn on this thing here. This is re-rasterize as you zoom in and stuff. Because this is a vector graphic we brought in an Adobe Illustrator file, we can actually have fun with this here. So this vector graphic, we just turn that on and then we get in here and we turn it on for all of the stuff. So if you want to turn on like multiple things at once, you just hold down Shift, you select the whole row, and then whatever you do to one, it'll happen to all of them. So we've turned on that. And now we want to turn on 3D on all of them because we're going to be using a camera and the camera is going to be panning around the document in 3D space. So if you set this to 3D, you can zoom in and zoom out and set depth of field and do all sorts of cool stuff with it, as if you're going over some sort of like an actual plane. It saves the whole document as planar data. All right, so then we get in here and we turn this to 3D as well, and we lock the layer. Boink! And we are done setting this up so far. Okay. Now what we want to do is let's get into our stuff here. This is the tutorial folder, and we have Martin Yap. He's the dude who recorded your fantastic audio. So what we do is we grab this and we bring it over here, throw it into here, and then throw it down here. Woo! Bunk. And you'll see I went through and I made marker points for every single transition. Every single time a frame changes, this will show you how to or when to advance to the next frame. You don't need to set the transition size or anything. The plugin actually automatically does that. It's just frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, that sort of thing. So let's get into this and I'll show you how to do that. So let's go to open and we can say, so what I did was here, I right clicked on this, or control click. Okay. You get in here and you say open and edit original. And what this will do is it'll bring up Adobe Audition and ask you, well, how do you want to bring this in? So you say, I just want to look at the waveform, and boom, you have the waveform. Now, I prefer to look at my waveform and spectrograph analysis just in case there's any things like phones or anything ringing in the background, or a squeaky door, or some sort of like hum in the background. You can actually see where those frequencies lay in this sort of spectrograph analysis. So up and down is the frequency, and the intensity between black and red and yellow, that is how loud the volume is, right? So you can actually see really clearly where things like phone calls and stuff, or telephones in the background, would be ringing. You can actually just select those areas and then just delete them and they'll go away. That's just a neat little trick for Adobe Audition. Up here we have the histogram. So this is a spectral analyzer. This is a histogram. Histogram just shows you volume. Okay, so if you have to do any processing on it, just make sure that you don't have anything like, if I take it and I boost it up, you'll see that I can get it so that it clips. Okay, you don't want it to clip. You don't want it to go right to the top and bottom there, because then when you try to shrink it down again, oh, like that. Like basically what this will do is it'll max out the volume. Everything will sound like that. So you don't want to do that. So you shrink it down, make sure that your top points are just below the top point there. Make sure your loudest points are not clipping, and you should be good. You don't have to listen to the whole thing if you just follow that simple rule. So you should be able to see what he did. He already did his equalization, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're getting audio from multiple sources and stuff, and you want to sort of normalize that, this is how you would do it. You would basically make sure that it doesn't clip, and then you would go into here and you'd say something like under effects, amplitude and compression, you'd put like normalized process or speech volume leveler, and what that does is it balances out the speech volume across the whole thing, so a person can whisper and a person can yell, and it won't cause a whole lot of distortion. The audio amplitudes will ramp up and ramp down as necessary. You don't have to really know any of that if you're getting a professional to record your audio. Okay, so that's just saying that. So basically what I do, how I put in these markers is I'm usually presented with this guy, which is just sort of the slide master document. It takes the script that the guy was reading from and breaks it down into these slides. So basically what Steve Shaw or you or somebody, possibly Desiree, I'm not sure, what they did was they took screenshots from the PDF, put it into the document, and showed how it matched up, which slide goes with which audio, which text. So you can go through and just follow along. A cool thing to do is you can put this, like, I don't know if you have a multi-window setup, or you can just put this on one side like this and shrink it up like that. Shrink it down so that you can see the whole thing, right? And then take your audio program and shrink that up And now the cool thing is what you can do now is you can play your audio like this. You follow along. Okay, and then when you get to a point, you just hit M, all right? And if you want to, you can even hover your mouse over here. Don't click on here, but hover your mouse over here, and you can scroll through the document and just keep hitting M whenever the slide changes in the audio. So you just have to listen to, you have to listen through this like maybe once or twice, and to make sure you get all your marks. And that's just how I do it. It's really handy to do it that way. So basically, I'm just using my my mouse wheel to scroll through this document while this is playing in the background / foreground. I have Audition selected, but I have my mouse over here, and this isn't selected, but I can see it, and I can scroll it because my mouse is over it, but Word isn't actually selected. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but so if I select Word, then I can scroll up and down, but then I won't be able to do anything with Audition. See, if I press M, it shows up there, right? But if I go over here and make sure Audition is selected and I scroll through here, I can hit M and look over here. I've added a marker. See, that's how that works. Okay, so that's just my process. You follow along whenever the audio changes. You just hit M, and then you can refine it later. So it just takes one more pass. If you miss it by a second or two, you can just go through and refine it at his pause, and it's super easy to do it that way. So then you hit save on this, and you go back to After Effects, and we have the audio in here. And then what you would do is you would say under markers, you would say update markers from source. And that's all you really got to do. Okay. So now what we have to do is we zoom on in to this thing. You might want to, I guess, just for the sake of placement, just increase your resolution, or yeah, increase your render resolution just for this step. So what we're going to do is we're going to add new null objects. Right, so you add a new null. I'm just right clicking down here on the timeline. Just do right click or control click, and you go new null object. Okay, so you go null one. We're going to call this slide one. Okay, and we look in the document. It's right here. Just for simplicity and to sort of make your life a little easier, what we're going to do is we're going to say A. So just type A on your keyboard, and that brings up anchor point. And we're going to put this at 50 and 50. By default, null objects come in at 100 pixels by 100 pixels. So if you put the anchor point at 50 by 50, you're right in the middle. All right. So now what we do is we resize the null object so that it fits the frame that we're trying to show. Okay. So what this guy does, MonkeyCam Pro, is it looks at the size of the frame, or the size of the objects, the layer size, and it'll zoom in based on the size of the layer, in theory. All right, so let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's bring it over just a little bit, and we'll just get in there and make sure it's just sort of like you have a nice buffer around it, and that's what we got. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go Command D. Command or Apple D, Command D, okay, and look, I've created slide 2, okay. So now, if we hold down the space bar while we're over the document window, we can go like this and just drag the new one down here and just put it right in the middle. And we're just going to resize this so that it makes sense for the layer that we're talking about, and then we go Command D again, and then bring it over, and we just do this for every single slide. So let's go through and just do that. Right, so Command D down here, Command D down here, D. For something like this is where setting your layer sizes is handy, right? See what I'm doing here? I've made it bigger, so we're going side to side and then middle. See? And then we're going to go middle again. So we go Command D down here. And then we do another side to side. So Command D. Shrank it up. Move it over. Command D. You can go like this, and here's, you can get a little fancy with it. You can go Command D again, and then because it's sort of moving up here and expanding on what this slide is all about, you can actually put this in the middle and expand it, right? So that when you get to this slide, it expands out and gives you the bigger picture. So you just think about, how you want to tell this story with the audio. So Command D, bring this down. I'm trying my best to line it up with the center line here. With the other graphics, it might be a little weirder to do it that way. So, just do what graphically makes sense. Just pretend that this is, I know that this isn't in the same aspect ratio of the actual document. Mine are a little squatter or a little more square. So MonkeyCam is going to do its best to sort of bring that in. If you wanted to get super fancy, you could put in a 16:9 aspect ratio null and center it up exactly the way you want to see it. But I'm just, lazy, and I'm doing this really quick for you. Okay, so we go here, and then we go Command D, and we bring this down, and we're going to show this. And then in the audio, the guy starts talking about this right below it. So it's a point that he makes, immediately after. So you go, let's grab this null again. Come on, null. Where are you? There you go. Command D, and we want to make it big so that it includes the one above it, like that. And then we go Command D again, and then this one pops up, and we make it small. And then the final one, Command D, like that. So you get a feel for how I'm sort of zooming in and out of the document and trying to make all of this work in sort of a storytelling kind of fashion. All right, so we end on this, and he makes a good point about blah, 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 customer first thinking, la, 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 la. All right, so now that we have all of these null objects, we have 16 of them in place, okay, we're going to select all of them. Just select the first one, hold down Shift, select the last one. We got all of them there. We're going to make them all into 3D layers. And what MonkeyCam Pro is going to do is it's going to look at all of the layers, okay? All of the ones that are not locked and are not audio layers, okay? So that just means all of the null objects that I made. Now, we could do this another way and actually position this so that all of these different disparate graphics just fit horizontally or something in the actual window here, but why mess with the layout of the PDF? Just take people through it, right? Okay, so now that we have all of our null objects selected and everything's cool there, we go up here and we say marker sync, which is right here in the MonkeyCam thing. You go marker sync, boop, and you want the order to be bottom. Okay, so basically that means you can, if you start at the top, you'd be starting with the last one first. So I want to say, no, I want to start from the bottom. So you start with the last, or the last one, and then you work your way up. Okay, you can set these to whatever order you want, or you can have them just go in at random if you want to have some sort of video that just goes, to random points, to random null objects within a much larger graphic. So basically the way I set it up, even though positionally I went top down, right? I went down, boop, 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 boop. With this, it's layer order that they're talking about, okay? So when you say order bottom, start at the bottom of the layers and then work your way up. Okay, I think I've belabored that point enough. So after that, we want to select our Martin Yap. It says, please select a marker guide layer. So you just go down here and you select your marker guide layer, all right? Which is the audio layer, okay? As long as that's selected and you have all your markers in place, this is going to work. So then you go up here and you say, do it. And what it does is it throws in a camera and it makes everything sneaky. It makes all of your null layers and everything sneaky, right? Or your shy. So if you press this little shy guy here, boom, all of your stuff comes back. So here's all your null layers that you created, and then it gives you a MonkeyCam Pro target layer and a MonkeyCam like an actual camera. Okay, so let's all make that shy so that we know what we're looking at here. Okay, and let's zoom out. And now you can see, look at this. Oh, and it goes here, and we go to the next one, and we go to the next one, and the whole thing is actually done. So at this point, we're done. Okay, we can set this thing to render, and the audio will be included in it, and everything's cool and fun and fine and dandy. Or if you want to get super fancy with it and make everyone think that you are a rock god among After Effects users or whatever, you could go in and you could spruce things up. So this is what I was saying before, right? You would go down here. Now that everything's been created, we don't have to have these locked anymore. So we unlock, and we go to our integrated customer management infographic layer. It's a comp. We can go in there. So we go to the point where we're transitioning. Go on the main timeline where we're transitioning. You see how this works, right? Okay. So we go there to where it stops. And now if we go into this particular thing, we double click on it. See? It preserved where you are in the timeline. So now what you can do is you can zoom in on just this portion, and you can, set some sort of crazy animation if you want to, right? So let's say we want this thing. So let's see here. We have everything's selected here. I don't want it to be selected. Get out of here. Get out of here. Stop being selected, damn it. Okay, so now we just select this one guy. Oh, look, it's frame 2, right? So then we just say, well, on frame 2, so let's go back to where we were. And we want it to be when slide 2 comes in, right? So just when it stops, we want it to start animating in, right? So we go here, and now we say, on this timeline, we go T for transparency. See, you type T and it comes up as opacity. So just think T transparency. Okay. And we set that to 0. And then we go forward just a few frames and we set that to 100. Oh, one sec. Before we do that, sorry. We set it to 0 and we set this little stopwatch thing. This sets up a keyframe. I'm pretty sure you know what keyframes are. Okay. And then you go forward just a few frames, and then you set it to 100. And now, when you get to this frame, the thing fades in, right? But you could do more than that, right? Like, the sky's the limit, because this is After Effects, people. So what we can do is we can say, okay, now that we set the transparency, why don't we set the rotation, right? And we're rotating in 3D space because it's a 3D layer, but let's not worry about that. We want to rotate along the Z. If you don't know which one to rotate on, just fiddle around. See, the Z is the one coming out you, so that's the axis that we're rotating on. Okay. If you want it to rotate on Y, we can have it so that it just sort of goes whoop and comes in. Now you can see that it looks like it's kind of getting cut off because it is. It's on the exact same plane as the background, right? So if you don't want that to happen, you can bring it forward a little bit by hitting P for position. Okay, and you see X, Y, Z. You want to bring it off the Z layer just a little bit. Woo, look at that. It's moving around like a crazy person. Okay, that's all crazy. And now when we go to rotate it, we can rotate it along the Y like I just did, and it won't be clipping into the background. You see how that works? Now the perspective is all off because we're looking at the perspective of the document itself, which is in the middle, right? So your line of sight, if you're drawing perspective lines from here, it comes out, remember your art class, your perspective lines come out from the middle of the document always. So that's why it's going to be a little skewed there. So generally I try to avoid, especially with these flat graphic kind of things, I try to avoid doing anything in 3D space. Let's just make the rotation happen as it's fading in. So we would do a Z rotation as it's fading in. So we go here, and then when it's fully faded in, we want to say, I rotated this 5 times. Okay. And now you can see as it's rotating in, oh, it comes out, it looks so crazy, right? And if you want to get super fancy with it, you can add in a motion blur. So as it's fading in, look at that. Look at that. It looks beautiful. Yeah, a little rotation blur. Okay, little motion blur. So now if we go back to the main frame work video. Okay, and this thing comes in. Watch what happens. So we'll just wait for the background rendering to catch up. Look at that. Oh, it came right in. Now, we have to set our motion blur here. Oh, we can't set the motion blur there. Why not? Because we have this thing on. Now we can set motion blur. So let's see what this looks like again. Wait for it. Okay, it's going to move. It's going to do its thing. Okay, it comes in. Oh, motion blur, so beautiful. Look at that. So as our Martin Yap guy is yapping away in the background, we have this little motion blurred graphic that just spins up and comes into place, right? So you can do like little custom animations like that for all of the steps as they come up. If you have a little bit of extra time to sort of put a little polish on that, it'll make you look like a rock star. So we'll just show that when it's rendered. Look at that, huh? And you can even get a little more fancy with that too if you wanted to, right? We have this selected. If you press U on your keyboard, just U, burp, burp. Now you can see all of the keyframes that you have there. So we noticed that the rotation lasted a little bit longer than the opacity. So why don't we just bring that back so that it matches up, right? We can zoom in on the timeline there. Okay, just by grabbing this little thing down here, or if you have a trackpad, you just pinch with your fingers and you can zoom in and out of the timeline. Okay, and what we can do, see how this is coming in, it's spinning, it looks really beautiful, but how about, well, let's make it look like it's coming into 3D space without actually having to do that weird skew thing because it's in actual 3D space. We can fudge it by doing a scale. So let's go here and we do a scale, and we say, okay, well, let's go back to U. And we go, okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm at the beginning of make sure that you're starting on the same keyframe. Okay, so then we put on scale and we start your keyframe, boop, and then we scale up when it ends. Oh, there, perfect. And then we're at 100%. So over here, you can just add a keyframe, right? This sets the keyframe, this sets the layer to accept keyframes. And then this puts new keyframes in. So if I do that, watch over here where the head is, where the playhead is. Go over here, click, it added the new keyframe. Now the reason why I did that is now you can navigate to and backward and toward all of your keyframes, right? So if I want to go back to the first keyframe and do something, I go boop like that, and now I can set my master scale. I'll set it to like maybe 50%. Okay, so it goes 50% all the way up to 100%. And now it's zooming in as it's spiraling, right? Zooming in and spiraling at the same time. That is so cool. Okay, so now if we go back to the graphic, we go back to the actual video, we'll see that it is actually doing that. That's the benefit of using comps, right? You can get in and you can tweak things without having to worry about your timeline getting all messed up. You're just tweaking essentially the infographic. You're just animating the infographic, but the timeline of your camera is independent of that. So when you're working with nested compositions, that's the benefit of it. It helps you really organize your documents a lot better. So we go down and it's zooming in. We'll just wait for this thing to render out. It's zooming in. Now you see how it's a little off kilter like that? It's kind of, it looks like a wobbly wheel. This is a pretty symmetrical graphic. So what you could do is, after all of this takes place, and, regardless of how wonky it looks, let's see here. So it goes in. There, you see how it kind of was kind of got a little wobbly there? You can also do crazy things afterwards. So if you go in here and you say, well, geez, I really like the way it was rendering, but it got really wobbly, and I want the center point where it's rotating to be actually on this dot, because I know this dot is the true center of the graphic, right? Because I'm a designer and I designed it that way. So what we can do is we can take the remember our good old friend anchor point from the null objects earlier. We can take the anchor point. So down here, this is frame 2. I have that selected, frame 2. You select it and you go anchor point. We're not going to set a keyframe on this. We're just going to make the universal anchor point for this one little graphic. We're going to put it right in the center of that dot. And then we won't get that wobbly, wobbly, wobbly look. Right? Let's go a little bit more. There we go. And we'll do this one. You can actually press your cursor keys, you know, your arrow keys on your keyboard to finely position this pixel by pixel if you want it to be sort of pixel perfect. Okay, so now we go back and we render it one more time. See, it's these weird little fiddly bits. Like we could have just ended with setting up the null objects, having the camera map to them based on the markers in the audio, and then we would have been done. It would have taken 15 minutes and you're all done. It's putting in the little flourishes that takes the bulk of the time, because now we're going to go through and we have to wait for this stupid thing to render again. But you can see immediately, look, it's not wobbling. That thing is rock solid, right? We put it right on the dot. The thing comes in, and then when it stops, it's rock solid, see? So let's go through again. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And then you can do other things like put in bounces and whatnot, or get really creative with your animations. You can have it come in or have it explode, or, you know, put in like a graphic of like a sort of a smoke hit or something like that. If you go to like videocopilot.net, you can download something called the Action Essentials, which allows you to put in like little smoke hits or little flourishes or magic and stuff like that, and they're live action assets, so it actually looks really skeuomorphic when you do it. So that's kind of cool. Just a little professional note there if you're putting these sort of things together. And I guess that just about wraps it up. From here, you would just want to do a render. So you can do it if you have the CC Adobe CC suite sort of installed. It comes with a media encoder, so you can send this out. Let's say you had to do like 5 videos in a row or whatever, you would set it up, make sure it's the way you want it to look and stuff, and then you would say up here in composition, you can say, where is it? You can say add to render queue or add to Adobe Media Encoder queue, right? So if you add it to Adobe Media Encoder queue and you actually have a half decent computer that has a decent video card, you click on that, Adobe Media Encoder comes up, and then you can have this thing rendering in the background. Sometimes these things, depending on how fancy you get, they can take a couple of hours to render if you get super fancy. Something like this is only going to take a few minutes to render because I didn't get too crazy. I'm just going around. But the more sort of effects you put in there, the more it has a tendency to get a little weird and bog down your system. So if you're adding like 3D effects and motion blur and depth of field kills it. It absolutely kills it because it actually has to calculate on every pixel, whereas motion blur, it can fudge certain things. You're just doing like a motion blur on an alpha mat. It's mathematically a little easier to do. So we go to, you can see Media Encoder came up. Burp. We're just going to wait for that. There we go. Here's the queue. Okay. If you don't want to do that, then we'll just go over here and you can add it to the integrated queue. So you would go under composition, add to render queue. Okay. Instead of Adobe Media Encoder, which just crapped out, we'll do render queue. And here it is. Okay. So your output module is lossless. We don't necessarily want that. And output 2. So we'll just go output 2, integrated framework. And let's just say we'll put it in a folder called renders. There, renders, right? And we'll call this version 1, v1. Okay. There we go. Bloop. And then we can, once the video is rendered, so you can see the progress here. It's rendering the video. It's going to be 5,100 frames. And it'll give you a little estimated time remaining 3 minutes, 4 minutes, right? Okay, and we're done. So what we can do now is let's have a look at the file, the render, see how big it is. 2.51 gigs. That's kind of not acceptable, right? It's a little big. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this and we'll get out of here. Now, you'll notice that the position as it was rendering out, the position of some of the things was a little bit weird, but that's okay. This is just a tutorial. I'm doing it really late on a Saturday night, so, you know, you get what you pay for. For things like, if we look at the placement of a lot of these things, you'll see that it's actually kind of pretty zoomed out from the content. It can get in a lot closer if you wanted to. There's camera settings and stuff that you can do that will allow that. So let's see here. But if you want to make it look, you know, exactly the way you want to make it look, so you can see that on frame 2, the camera is not as zoomed in as you would like it to be, right? So what we can do is we can unshy this. We can look at the MonkeyCam, okay? Maybe even double click on it. And we can actually just make it universally zoom in for every single frame, right? Just set the zoom to something a little bit bigger, okay? There. And since we're not keyframing this you know, this telephoto zoom effect is going to be on all of your slides now. So now we go to slide 3. See? Everything's centered just a little bit better now, right? You can even do crazy things like if we go up here to the effects, the effect controls for this, your MonkeyCam Pro effect controls, up here you can do things like wiggle. If you find that the script makes the guy stand or stay on a point for a little too long, you can do things like make the camera wiggle or sort of pan slowly across and then back, and all of that is just, you know, it's customizable up here, and it allows you to just sort of take your hands off doing the fiddly bits, right? So you can do things like lens jitter to give it some sort of like a grunge effect. You can do glitch controls. You can make it all glitch out and be all crazy. You can do depth of field, as I was saying. So if you wanted to actually pan sort of at a skewed angle across the document, you can have it so stuff in the background, like further away from the camera, is out of focus, and stuff that's closer to the camera is in focus, right? So you can do this thing where you're almost flying over the document instead of just zooming in on specific portions, right? So it gives you a lot of granular control that hand animating would be a big pain in the bum to accomplish. All right. Okay. What I'm going to do is, let's see if I can get Adobe Media Encoder to first get rid of this old one and actually encode this file. See if I can get it to work a little better. There we go. Okay, this is the screen that I wanted to see. So basically, we rendered it out in After Effects, so it's a really giant file. And now we're bringing it into Adobe Media Encoder, and we're applying the H.264 codec to it to crunch it down to something a little more meaningful. Okay, so we have V1, MP4, Integrated Customer Framework. Okay, and we go we can put it on VBR. I generally do 2-pass. Just because you get slightly better quality. Down here is going to be your estimated file size. We're going to do things like compress the audio. Generally 4800 hertz is a little much for just a vocal track, so we can do 32 or 441. I usually do 441. It's mono, right? We don't have any music in the background. We don't have any other stereo effects in it, so it's all mono. And the bitrate, you can crunch that all the way down to 128 usually without getting too much stuff. If you want to get sort of a high-end sound that doesn't have any weird kind of stuff like that, you can go all the way up to 160. 128 is fine, okay? Especially for what you're using it for. And so now you can see that just those little tweaks to the audio brought it down substantially. Now it's 215 megs. Now if we go to the video, and you see how it's all, oh, there's a lot of things here. I'm so scared. So don't worry about any of that. We're matching source. So that means that your composition settings are going to be the settings in the video. So that's 30 frames per second at 10 or at 1920 by 1080, right? So that's your 16 by 9 HD aspect ratio. It's going to be square pixels because it's going to be shown on computer screens. So don't worry about this NTSC and PAL. It's not going on a DVD player, so don't worry about that at all. Render at maximum depth. Don't worry about that. We're just going to go all the way down here to where it says bitrate settings. Okay, so these are your variable bitrate settings. So we're going to go generally, you want to put like maybe 2 megabits per second between your lowest and your highest, right? So we want to say, we can probably do something like, at lowest, I want to make it 2 megabits per second, and on the highest, I want to make it 4 megabits per second. Now look at that. For that 1080p video, that's almost 2.5 minutes long, it's now only 45 megs. As opposed to, what was it before, like 2 gigs, right? So now let's render this out and see what the finished quality looks like. So we go up here, we've set our custom preset settings. You can actually save these settings, right? So now you can go here and you can say, oh, it's custom. You should be able to save this setting somehow. Probably up here. Preset. There, create encoding preset. So you can actually save that so you don't have to keep going. You just say Andrew's preset, and then you can just load that up each time so you don't have to go in there and fiddle with everything. It just goes, okay, audio is this, video is this, boom, we're done. So let's look at the quality of a 45 meg video, see how much that actually crunches it down. You can see that it's actually going a lot faster too than the After Effects render, because we're just rendering the data that's already there. After Effects was writing it all on the fly. This is just crunching down additional data. So it's essentially like running like a zip algorithm on it. It's pretty quick. Okay, and now it's all rendered out. So let's see where it is in our thing here. There we go. And we'll see if this is high res or not. So the first one, remember, was 2.51 gigabytes. This is 45 meg or 40.5 megs. And look, it's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Okay, so this makes it really portable. Okay, and it also makes it so that you can upload it to YouTube really easily. You don't want to upload a 2 gig file because you're going to be waiting there all night. Especially, usually you will have to do these things in the afternoon. Just crunch it down. So, just take the extra step to crunch it down, because you're going to be delivering this in an online format anyway. So crunch it down. Make sure you have a good quality but very minimal file size. Send that up to YouTube so that you're not waiting for a 2 gig file to upload. YouTube will take a 2 gig file and it'll do essentially this crunch down for you. But waiting for uploads, you're going to want to take your own life, especially it's on like a Friday when they usually ask you to do this stuff. So just crunch it down and then it'll be up on YouTube within 5 minutes. Okay, capiche? All right, I hope this tutorial helps you figure out this stuff, and I hope this sort of carries your career a little further, because this stuff is invaluable to know. If you know how to do interactive design and video work, right, then mocking up almost anything is going to be hands down your biggest asset, right? You can do motion graphics for web projects if you want to do like big sort of commercial campaigns and stuff, and you can generate a lot of motion graphic assets that can then be played in like an HTML canvas if you have the right developer. Like all of these things are become available to you if you just sort of knuckle down and figure out how to use these tools effectively, especially in an online setting. All right, I'm gonna get off my soapbox now. All right, so thank you very much for watching this, and good luck. If you need anything, just reach out, and yeah, I guess I'll see you around. Bye.